Last week's Parsha leaves me really angry with Abraham and Sarah. These ancestors that we revere are not always so reverable. Jewish tradition looks at them with such honor and awe, but after last week's Parsha, which tells some of their actual stories, I'm not feeling so sure about that. Last week, Sarah gets angry at Ishmael and tells Abraham to send him and Hagar away. Abraham listens to Sarah as God tells him to and sends them away. Abraham doesn't send them with provisions for a long journey, no servant, no donkey. He just sends them out with some bread and water into the desert. And not long after, Abraham, at the command of God again, nearly kills his own child, his other child. And these are uncomfortable stories about the parents of our people. But they are our ancestors. And despite the uncomfortable stories, we do praise their names. We invoke their honor for our own benefit. We teach their stories. We call them mother and father. And I want to look at the opening lines of this week's Parsha to understand how to relate to our complicated ancestry. In this week's Parsha, Hayyei, Abraham and Sarah both died. And the verses surrounding Sarah's death, I think, can give us perspective on her life and legacy. The Parsha begins, V'hiyu Hayyei 100 shana, 20 shana, v'sheva shanim, shnei Hayyei Sarah. And this is the life of Sarah, 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years were the years of Sarah's life. The Parsha continues to describe mourning for Sarah and Abraham's negotiations to purchase a burial site. This attention at her death indicates, in biblical fashion, how honored Sarah was. Additionally, the number of her years illustrates her honor. Her age surpasses the ideal of 120, the sacred number of 7. Clearly, the Torah is telling us a holy person has left the world. Rashi picks up in the Torah's cues and sums up Sarah's life by explaining the expansion of her age. 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. He explains that the years are expanded to tell us that each digit should be understood on its own. He says, at the age of 100, she was like a person of the age of 20 in her sins. Just as a 20-year-old is not culpable for punishment, it's because she never sins. And when she was 20 years old, she had the beauty of a 7-year-old. Ignoring the question of what it means for a young woman to have the beauty of a 7-year-old, Rashi gives us a simple explanation of Sarah's life. She was flawless. She did no wrong. She was sin-free and beautiful. Rashi speaks to the tradition of honoring our ancestors as moral exemplars. I cannot imagine how Hagar would hear these words. Hagar experienced the brunt of Sarah's flaws. But we know Sarah is more complex than Rashi presents her here. Let us now turn to a surprising biblical commentator, Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Stanton is well known as one of the founding leaders of the women's rights movement in America. She is less well known for her Bible commentary, The Woman's Bible, published in 1895 and written by her and the Revising Committee, a committee of 25 American and European women. Stanton gives us a very different narrative regarding Sarah's character. Stanton writes on this Parsha, whilst we drop a tear at the tomb of Sarah, we cannot recommend her as an example to the young women of our day, as she lacked several of the cardinal virtues. She was undignified, untruthful, and unkind to Hagar. Stanton focuses on Sarah's treatment of Hagar and stingingly condemns her. She seems to reject the notion of admiring Sarah as a matriarch. Stanton continues, but our moral standard differs from that of the period in which Sarah lived, as our ideas of right and wrong are not innate, but depend on education. Sarah probably lived up to the light that was in her. Stanton's only sympathy towards Sarah is to imply that perhaps Sarah was not educated to know their actions were wrong. Just as I'm not comfortable with Rashi's too perfect image of Sarah, this complete rejection of Sarah's moral character is too extreme and also too simple. Not an inheritor of the rabbinic tradition, Stanton is not tied to the notion that Sarah is a venerable ancestor. She is not part of the tradition that holds Abraham as the highest model of religious leadership, and Sarah as well by association. But I am. I read the troubling stories of Tanakh about our ancestors, and I need to understand them in ways that maintain the honor of our ancestors, while allowing for their human fallibility. Intrigued but frustrated by Stanton's dismissal of Sarah, I was pleased to find a more sympathetic voice among the Revising Committee. Clara Hewitt-Colby, 30 years Stanton's junior, does not take such an extreme view as Stanton or as Rashi. Colby writes, if we take any part of this story, we must take it all. And remember that it has been promised to Abraham that of Ishmael a great nation would be born. This, Colby insists, must be taken into account when estimating the motives which led to Abraham and Sarah, for doubtless Abraham told Sarah of his vision. This reading of the story changes things. Abraham and Sarah sent Hagar and Ishmael away, but not to the unknown of the desert. They sent them away from their home, knowing that Ishmael was destined to father a great nation. They received prophecy from God that Ishmael had a secure, prosperous future. With this promise from God, Colby suggests that Sarah and Abraham knew that Ishmael did not need the support of their home. Perhaps they sent them away as Ishmael was growing up, to a place where he could not be just the concubine's child, but indeed could grow into a patriarch himself. Rashi, Stanton, and Colby offer three contrasting perspectives on Sarah's character. I find Rashi and Stanton too extreme to be compelling. Rashi lauded Sarah as blemish-free, while the only glimmer of goodwill that Stanton commits Sarah is that she did not know ethics. We are often guilty of these kinds of reading situations in these ways. It is easy to categorically dismiss the action of someone we do not know or do not like. When someone pushes past you to get on the subway, it's easy to say, that's an awful person. It is often just as easy to ignore the flaws of someone we love. Knowing that a friend is rushing to the hospital where their sibling is having a child, you understand why they stole someone else's cab. But of course, real life is complicated. We cannot ask Sarah why she did what she did, but we can give her the benefit of the doubt without whitewashing her character. Rashi might be too extreme, but I can identify with Colby's suggestion. This sympathetic but honest perspective is one which the world is lacking. Sarah's actions have been examined for generations, and this is what allows for such a nuanced understanding. Usually when we react to something that someone does, we do not have the benefit of sympathetic analysis. We make snap judgments. We do not give people the benefit of the doubt, and we respond and we move on. So many sides of Sarah can be brought to light by investigating her actions, and she is someone for whom we already have deep respect. What if we tried to approach more people in our lives with this respect and sympathy? What if we judged each person in their favor? As Pirkei Avot teaches, Dan kol adam l'chaf zechut, judge each person for their benefit. We may be bothered by Sarah's actions, but we pause to judge her l'chaf zechut, for her benefit. May we bring this openness and belief in the good of others to those we encounter in our lives. May we increase understandings in our communities by having faith in others as we have faith in our ancestors that are all working to make the same world a more positive place. Shabbat Shalom.